The Valorian Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds. They had conquered 500 species and turned them into slaves. No one had ever challenged them. No one had ever won against them. Emperor Thalvexis sat on his throne made of compressed starlight. He was old, even by Valorian standards. He had watched his father conquer entire galaxies. He had done the same. The universe belonged to the Dominion, and everyone knew it. On this particular day, his advisors brought him something unusual. A small blue planet had been detected in an unremarkable corner of space. It was sending signals into the void. Radio waves, television broadcasts. The noise of a young civilization trying to reach out to the stars. "What is this world called?" the Emperor asked. "The inhabitants call it Earth," replied High Executor Morndaxis. He was the Emperor's most trusted commander. He had led 100 successful invasions. "They are primitive, my lord. They have barely touched their own moon. They fight among themselves with simple weapons. Their bodies are weak. Their lives are short. They live only 80 years at most." The Emperor laughed. Valorians lived for thousands of years. 80 years was nothing. It was the lifespan of an insect. "What resources does this world have?" Thalvexis asked. "Water, minerals, a large population that could serve as workers." Morndaxis pulled up images of Earth on the display screen. Blue oceans, green forests, cities that glittered at night. "They number 8 billion. More than enough for our labor camps." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Then we will harvest them. Send a fleet. 300 ships. Should be more than enough for such a primitive species." Morndaxis bowed. "It will be done, my lord. I expect full surrender within 1 day. Perhaps 2. Neither of them questioned this. Why would they? The Dominion had done this 500 times before. Every species broke eventually. Every world fell. This small blue planet would be no different. The fleet launched the next morning. 300 warships tore through space. Each one was massive, built for conquest. They carried weapons that could crack continents. They carried soldiers bred for war. They carried the absolute certainty of victory. Commander Vexeral led the invasion force. He was young and eager to prove himself. This would be his first conquest, and he intended to make it quick. He wanted to impress the High Executor. He wanted glory. The fleet arrived in Earth's solar system on a quiet Tuesday morning. The humans did not detect them at first. Their primitive sensors were pointed in the wrong direction. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Vexeral did not announce his presence. He did not offer terms of surrender. The Dominion never did. Why negotiate with insects? His first order was simple. Destroy their orbital station. Cut their communications. Blind them. The International Space Station vanished in a flash of light. 6 astronauts died instantly. They never knew what hit them. Then came the kinetic strikes. Rods of dense metal dropped from orbit at incredible speeds. They hit military bases across the planet. Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, Delhi. Each impact was like a nuclear bomb without the radiation. In the first hour, 14 million humans died. Vexeral watched the destruction from his command ship. He felt nothing. These creatures were not people to him. They were resources. They were cattle. They would learn their place soon enough. "Begin landing operations," he ordered. "Secure the major population centers. Any resistance is to be eliminated." His officers obeyed without question. Dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere. Valorian soldiers poured out onto the streets of burning cities. They expected the survivors to kneel. They expected begging. They expected surrender. That was not what they found. In New York, a group of firefighters attacked a Valorian patrol with axes and sledgehammers. They killed 2 soldiers before being gunned down. In Tokyo, a grandmother drove her car into a landing craft at full speed. In Lagos, factory workers threw Molotov cocktails at alien armor. Vexeral received these reports with confusion. This was not how conquered species behaved. They should be running. They should be hiding. They should be surrendering. Instead, they were fighting back. He dismissed his concerns. These were just isolated incidents. The humans were in shock. Once they understood the full power of the Dominion, they would submit. They always did. But as the hours passed, the resistance only grew stronger. Human military units that should have been destroyed reorganized and counterattacked. Civilians picked up weapons from fallen soldiers, and joined the fight. People who had been enemies yesterday now fought side by side. The Americans worked with the Russians. The Indians worked with the Pakistanis. The Israelis worked with the Iranians. Every old grudge, every ancient hatred, every political division vanished in an instant. For the first time in human history, Earth was united. General Yuki Tanaka of Japan took command of what remained of Earth's military forces. She had lost her entire family in the first strike. Her home was gone. Her country was burning. But she did not weep. She did not despair. She planned. "They think we are weak," she said to the assembled commanders. "They think we will break. They have conquered 1,000 species who did exactly that." She looked at each of them in turn. Her eyes were hard. Her voice was steady. "But they have never fought humans, and they are about to learn what that means." Across the planet, humanity dug in. They hid in mountains and forests. They fortified their cities. They turned every street into a kill zone, and every building into a fortress. The Valorians had expected surrender within a day. They had made a terrible mistake. Commander Vex Ral stood in the ruins of what had once been Paris. The Eiffel Tower lay twisted and broken behind him. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires. The city should have been pacified by now. Instead, his soldiers were dying in the streets. He could not understand it. The Valorians had better weapons. They had better armor. They had better training. By every measure, they should have crushed these primitive humans within hours. But 3 months had passed, and Earth still refused to fall. "Report," he demanded from his officers. The news was not good. They had lost 4,000 soldiers in the past week alone. Human resistance fighters had destroyed 12 supply convoys. A Valorian patrol had vanished completely in the mountains of Afghanistan. No survivors, no signals, just silence. "How is this possible?" Vex Ral hissed. "They are primitives. Their weapons are ancient. Their technology is worthless." His science officer, a thin Valorian named Thexius, stepped forward nervously. "Commander, I have been studying the humans. I believe I understand what is happening. Then explain it to me." Thexius pulled up data on his tablet. "The humans are different from other species we have conquered. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Ice ages, plagues, natural disasters. They survived all of it. They evolved to endure suffering. So they are stubborn. That means nothing against our firepower. There is more, Commander." Thexius showed images of human history. Wars, revolutions, disasters. They have spent their entire existence fighting. They fight their environment. They fight each other. They fight diseases. They have never known peace. Violence is in their blood. Vex Ral studied the images. He saw humans charging into battle against impossible odds. He saw them building weapons from scraps. He saw them refusing to surrender even when surrounded, even when wounded, even when death was certain. "They do not think like us," Thexius continued. "When we face defeat, we calculate our losses and withdraw. It is logical. It is efficient. But humans do not do this. They have a concept called spite. They will hurt themselves just to hurt their enemies. They will die just to take one more of us with them." Deep in the forests of Russia, a farmer named Alexei proved this point. He had lost his wife and children in the first attack. His village was ash. He had nothing left to live for, but he had plenty to die for. He spent weeks building bombs from fertilizer and old machinery. He hid them along roads the Valorians used. Then he waited. When a Valorian convoy passed through, Alexei pressed the trigger. The explosion killed 30 alien soldiers. It also killed Alexei. He smiled as he died. Stories like this repeated across the world. In Vietnam, tunnel networks that had once fought American soldiers now trapped Valorian patrols. In Brazil, tribes that had avoided modern civilization emerged from the Amazon to launch guerrilla raids. In Switzerland, engineers who had built watches now built weapons. The humans shared everything. A teenager in Estonia figured out how to hack Valorian communications. Within days, every resistance cell on Earth had the information. A mechanic in Detroit learned how to disable alien armor. The technique spread across continents within hours. High Executor Morndaxis received weekly reports from Commander Vex Ral. Each one was worse than the last. The casualty numbers climbed. The conquest stalled. The humans would not break. "What are these creatures?" Morndaxis whispered to himself. As he read the latest report, a Valorian base in China had been attacked at night. The humans had crawled through miles of sewer tunnels to reach it. They had emerged covered in filth, half-starved, armed with crude weapons. They had killed every Valorian inside. Then they had vanished back into the darkness. Another report described an attack in Africa. A human woman had walked into a Valorian checkpoint wearing a bomb. She had smiled at the guards. She had spoken to them kindly. Then she had detonated herself, killing 12 soldiers. The Valorians had no response to this. Their species had evolved past such primitive emotions long ago. Self-sacrifice was illogical. Spite was inefficient. But humans did not care about logic or efficiency. They cared about revenge. General Tanaka coordinated the resistance from a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Japan. She had united fighters from every nation. Former enemies now called each other brothers. The invasion had done something no human leader had ever achieved. It had made humanity one people. They expected us to surrender, she told her commanders during a strategy meeting. They have never met a species that would rather die than submit. That is their weakness. They do not understand us. She pointed to a map showing Valorian positions. We cannot beat them in open battle. Their technology is too advanced. But we can bleed them. We can make every step forward cost them dearly. We can make them fear us. And the humans did exactly that. Valorian soldiers began to hesitate before entering buildings. They began to fear the dark. They began to see enemies everywhere. The confident conquerors who had landed on Earth became nervous, paranoid, afraid. Morndaxis made his report to Emperor Thalavexis with a heavy heart. My lord, we have lost more soldiers in 6 months on Earth than in our previous 50 conquests combined. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Then send more soldiers. My lord, I do not think more soldiers will help. These humans, they are not like other species. They do not surrender. They do not break. They only adapt and fight harder. Then we will burn their world to ashes. Morndaxis bowed. As you command, my lord. But deep inside, he felt something he had never felt before. Something that surprised and disturbed him. He felt fear. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 20 years studying physics in a small university in Spain. Nobody famous. Nobody important. She had written papers that only a handful of people had ever read. She had dreamed of touching the stars but knew she never would. Then the Valorians came, and everything changed. She now stood in a massive bunker carved into the mountains of Switzerland. Around her worked the greatest minds humanity had managed to save. Physicists, engineers, biologists, chemists. They had been gathered from the ruins of universities around the world. Their mission was simple but impossible. Learn the enemy's technology. Find a way to fight back. On the table in front of Elena sat a Valorian faster-than-light drive. It had been recovered from a crashed scout ship in Argentina. The pilot had been killed by a farmer with a shotgun. That farmer had died protecting the wreckage until military forces could arrive. Elena touched the alien device with trembling fingers. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It represented technology that humans had only dreamed about in science fiction stories. This should not be possible, said Dr. Yusuf Ibrahim, a physicist from Egypt. He had lost his entire research team in the Cairo bombardment. The energy requirements alone should be beyond any civilization. And yet it works, Elena replied. The question is how? They took the device apart piece by piece. They studied every component. They ran thousands of tests. They argued and debated and sometimes screamed at each other. Time was running out. The Valorians were advancing. Humanity needed a miracle. 3 months later, Elena finally understood. She called an emergency meeting of the science team. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her hands shook with excitement. But her voice was steady. I know how it works, she announced. And I know how to make it better. The room fell silent. The Valorians developed this technology 10,000 years ago, Elena explained. They have refined it over time, made it more efficient, more reliable, but they have never fundamentally changed it. They found a solution that worked and stopped looking for better ones. She pulled up diagrams on the screen. Their drive bends space in a very specific way. It is elegant but limited. They accept these limits as natural laws. She smiled. But they are not natural laws. They are just limits of imagination. Dr. Chen Wei, a Chinese engineer who would later become an admiral, leaned forward. What are you saying, Elena? I am saying that we can do better. We can push harder. We can break through limits that the Valorians never even questioned. She pointed to her calculations. Their ships can travel at 50 times the speed of light. Ours can travel at 200. The scientists stared at her in disbelief. Then they started talking all at once. Questions flew. Arguments broke out. Some said it was impossible. Others said it was brilliant. General Tanaka cut through the noise. She had traveled to the bunker personally to hear this report. Can you build it? Can you build ships that will fly? Elena met her eyes. Yes. Give me 6 months. Give me resources. Give me people. I will give you a fleet. The construction happened in secret. Hidden facilities were built beneath oceans and inside mountains. Every nation contributed what it could. Factories that had made cars now made weapons. Mines that had produced gold now produced the rare elements needed for the drives. The Valorians never noticed. They were too focused on the ground war. They were too confident in their superiority. They could not imagine that these primitive humans could possibly threaten them in space. This was their greatest mistake. The first human starship was called the UES Defiance. It was ugly. It was crude. It was held together with salvaged alien technology and human stubbornness. But when Elena pressed the button to activate the drive, it flew. Not just flew. It screamed through space faster than any Valorian ship had ever traveled. Elena watched the test from the control room. Tears ran down her face. 20 years of being nobody. 20 years of small dreams and smaller achievements. And now she had given humanity the stars. More ships followed. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. They were built in secret. They were armed with weapons that combined human creativity with Valorian precision. Human engineers looked at alien guns and asked one question. How can we make this deadlier? The answers were terrifying. Human weapons did not just destroy. They corrupted. They infected. They turned enemy systems against themselves. Viruses designed by human hackers could spread through Valorian networks at faster than light speeds. Missiles carried warheads that did not simply explode but dissolved matter at the molecular level. General Tanaka inspected the growing fleet with something like hope. They came here expecting to harvest us, she said. They thought we were cattle, insects. They had no idea what they were waking up. Dr. Vasquez stood beside her. We have been climbing out of caves for only a few thousand years. They have had the stars for millions. But we are hungry in a way they have forgotten. We push. We question. We break through limits. The general nodded. When do we launch? Soon. The fleet is almost ready. The crews are trained. Elena paused. They know most of them will not come back. And they volunteered anyway? Every single one. Tanaka smiled grimly. That is what the Valorians will never understand about us. We do not fight because we think we will win. We fight because it is who we are. In hidden bases around the world, human soldiers boarded human starships. They knew what waited for them in the darkness between stars. They knew the odds were against them. They did not care. The Valorians had come to Earth, looking for slaves. They had found something far more dangerous instead. They had found humanity with nothing left to lose. Emperor Thalvexis was celebrating when the news arrived. He had just received reports of another successful harvest on a distant world. His throne room was filled with music and wine and servants from a dozen conquered species. Then a messenger burst through the doors. His face was pale. His hands trembled. He fell to his knees before the emperor. "My lord," he gasped. "The humans. They have attacked." The emperor frowned. "Attacked? They have no ships. They have no fleet. What could they possibly attack?" "Everything, my lord. They have attacked everything." The reports came in waves. Each one was more impossible than the last. 17 Valorian outposts had been struck at the same time. Human ships had appeared without warning. They moved faster than any vessel the Dominion had ever tracked. They hit hard and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. But it was not just the attacks. It was how they fought. On the colony world of Vexthar, human soldiers had landed in the slave quarters. They had found 10,000 members of a species called the Threll, who had served the Dominion for 3,000 years. The Threll had forgotten what freedom meant. They had accepted their chains. The humans reminded them. "You are not property," the human commander told the confused Threll. "You are people, and you can fight." The humans gave them weapons. They taught them how to use them. They showed them that the Valorians were not gods. They could bleed. They could die. When the humans left, the thrill rose up. For the first time in 3,000 years, they fought their masters. Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. The humans did not try to conquer territory. They did not try to hold ground. They simply lit fires everywhere they went. They freed slaves. They destroyed supply lines. They spread a single message to every conquered species: rise. High Executor Morn Daxus watched his empire begin to crack. Rebellions broke out on 100 worlds. Species that had been silent for millennia suddenly remembered their anger. The Dominion had to pull troops from the Earth campaign to deal with internal threats. "This is impossible," he muttered. "We are the Dominion. We have ruled for 12,000 years. His aide brought him more bad news. "My lord, the primary shipyard at Kexval has been destroyed." "Destroyed? How?" "That facility had orbital defenses. It had 200 guard ships. A single human infiltration team, my lord. They landed on the planet's surface and made their way to the facility on foot. It took them 3 weeks. When they reached the antimatter storage area, they detonated it. They killed themselves to destroy our shipyard?" "Yes, my lord. They sent a message before they died." The aide's voice shook. They said, "Remember Earth." The psychological attacks were equally devastating. Human hackers broke into Dominion communication networks. They broadcast videos across the Empire, videos of Valorian soldiers dying, videos of human resistance fighters standing defiant, videos of freed slaves burning Dominion flags. One video spread faster than all others. It showed a human woman walking calmly into the Hall of Conquests on the Valorian throne world itself. She walked past security. She smiled at guards. She reached the center of the Great Hall, where the trophies of 1,000 conquered worlds were displayed. Then she looked directly at the camera. "You took everything from us," she said. "Our homes, our families, our future. You thought we would break. You were wrong." She pressed a button on her wrist. The explosion erased 3 city blocks from existence. Emperor Thalvexus watched the video in stunned silence. The Hall of Conquests was sacred. It was the heart of Valorian pride. No enemy had ever struck there in 12,000 years, and a single human woman had destroyed it with a smile on her face. Morndaxus requested an audience with the Emperor. He had never looked so old, so tired, so afraid. "My lord," he said carefully, "we must consider negotiation." "Negotiation?" The Emperor's voice was cold. "With insects? My lord, these insects are burning our empire. Our conquered species are rebelling. Our ships are being destroyed. Our soldiers are dying by the thousands. Then we will crush them completely." Thalvexus roared. "I will assemble the entire Dominion fleet, 2,000 warships. We will return to their pathetic world and burn it to bedrock. Not a single human will survive." Morndaxus bowed his head. He knew this was a mistake, but the Emperor would not be argued with. "It will be done, my lord." The fleet assembled over the following weeks. 2,000 warships, the largest force the Dominion had ever gathered. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Enough soldiers to conquer 100 worlds. They set course for Earth. They did not know that this was exactly what the humans wanted. Every attack, every rebellion, every act of defiance had been designed for one purpose: to make the Emperor angry enough to commit his entire force. General Tanaka received word that the fleet was coming. She stood in her command center, surrounded by screens showing the disposition of human forces. The odds were terrible. The Valorians had numbers and technology on their side, but humans had something else. "They are coming with everything they have," she told her commanders. "Good. That means when we break them completely." She looked at the faces around her. Men and women from every nation on Earth. All of them ready to die. All of them refusing to give up. "Today we show the galaxy what humanity truly is," she said. "Today we make them pay for everything they have done." The Dominion fleet translated into Earth's solar system, expecting easy victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Valorian armada emerged from faster-than-light travel, expecting to find a broken world defended by desperate survivors. 2,000 warships, the greatest fleet in the history of the Dominion. Enough power to burn 100 planets. What they found was silence. Earth hung in the darkness of space, blue and green and beautiful. Around it floated the wreckage of the original invasion fleet. 300 ships, left exactly where they had died. The humans had not cleaned up the debris. They had left it as a message. Emperor Thalvexis stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Conquest. He looked at the ruined ships and felt satisfaction. This was evidence of human resistance, evidence that would soon mean nothing. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Leave nothing alive." Then the wreckage began to move. What the Valorians had dismissed as debris suddenly came to life. Thousands of objects activated at once. Mines, drones, weapons, platforms, all of them human-built, all of them hidden among the ruins for this exact moment. The first Valorian ships died before they could react. Explosions tore through the fleet. Shields that had never failed suddenly collapsed under weapons they could not understand. Ships that had conquered worlds fell silent and dark as human viruses infected their systems. Admiral Chen Wei commanded the human defense from the bridge of the UES. Remember, the name was deliberate. Humans remembered everything. Every death, every loss, every injustice. And they paid back every single one. "All ships, engage," he ordered calmly. The human fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon. 500 ships, smaller than the Valorian vessels, less heavily armed, but faster, so much faster. They tore into the Valorian formation like wolves among sheep. The Valorians tried to respond. They had numbers, they had experience, they had 12,000 years of military tradition, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Human tactics made no sense to them. Human ships flew in patterns that seemed random but were actually coordinated. Human captains took risks that seemed suicidal, but somehow worked. Human pilots flew into enemy fire without hesitation, sacrificing themselves to protect their comrades. Captain Maria Santos commanded a small destroyer called the Fury. Her ship was damaged early in the battle. Her weapons were failing. Her shields were gone. She had two choices: retreat or attack. She chose attack. "All hands brace for impact," she announced over the intercom. "It has been an honor serving with you." Then she drove her ship directly into a Valorian cruiser 10 times her size. The collision destroyed both vessels. 400 Valorians died, 23 humans. Across the battlefield, similar acts of sacrifice happened again and again. Human ships that could have escaped instead chose to fight. Human soldiers who could have surrendered instead chose to die, taking enemies with them. Emperor Thalvexis watched in horror as his invincible fleet crumbled. Ships he had known for centuries vanished in fire. Officers who had served his family for generations screamed and died. The Dominion's power was breaking apart before his eyes. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, the Valorian fleet was destroyed. 1,500 ships drifted dead in space. Hundreds more had fled in panic. The Divine Conquest itself was crippled, its engines dead, its weapons silent. Human marines boarded the Emperor's ship. They fought through corridors filled with the bodies of Valorian soldiers. They did not stop. They did not slow. They had come for one thing. General Tanaka led the assault personally. Her armor was scarred from a dozen battles. Blood dripped from a wound on her arm. She had not slept in 3 days, but her eyes were clear, and her aim was steady. The doors to the Emperor's throne room fell. Inside, Thalvexis sat alone. His guards lay dead around him. He had a weapon in his hand but did not raise it. He looked at the human soldiers surrounding him. Small creatures, fragile, short-lived, and yet they had done what no species had accomplished in 12,000 years. They had broken the Dominion. Tanaka walked forward until she stood before the throne. She looked up at the ancient emperor. She felt no hatred, no anger, just cold, hard purpose. "You could have passed us by," she said. "We would have reached the stars eventually. Perhaps we could have been friends, allies. We might have shared the universe together." She paused. "Instead, you chose to teach us what the galaxy is really like. You taught us that the strong take what they want. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that the only law is power." She leaned close to his face. "We learned. The Emperor's execution was broadcast across Dominion space. Every conquered species watched. Every Valorian watched. Every world in the galaxy saw the ancient ruler fall. The Dominion collapsed within a decade. Without the Emperor, without the fleet, without the fear that had held everything together, the Empire crumbled. Conquered species rose up. Valorian colonies fell. The great power that had ruled the stars became dust and memory. Earth did not replace them. Humans had no interest in building an empire. They had learned what empires cost, and they wanted no part of it. Instead, they built something else, an alliance of free species, a community based on respect rather than fear, a galaxy where strength meant protecting the weak, not destroying them. 100 years later, human children learned about the Valorian War in school. They learned about the invasion. They learned about the resistance. They learned about the sacrifices made by ordinary people who refused to surrender. And they learned one final lesson, a phrase that had spread from Earth to every corner of known space, a warning that every species taught their children before all others. Do not start fights you cannot finish. On Earth, a monument stood in the ruins of old Paris. It listed the names of everyone who had died in the war. 63 million names carved into black stone. Soldiers and civilians, scientists and farmers, men and women and children who had given everything for humanity's survival. General Tanaka's name was among them. She had died 10 years after the war, her body finally giving out from wounds that had never fully healed. But her words lived on, words she had spoken to the assembled leaders of the new Galactic Alliance on the day of its founding. "We are small," she had said. "We are fragile. We live brief lives in a vast and ancient universe, but we do not surrender. We do not break. We do not forgive those who try to destroy us. This is what it means to be human. And now the galaxy knows it too. The stars belong to everyone now, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way, forever."